Think Pink. Glenn McGrath joins us with new developments in the battle against breast cancer. Fall of Roman. An international row erupts over the arrest of fugitive filmmaker Roman Polanski. Dog napping. A cute canine shoots to stardom after a robbery attempt. And having a laugh, funny men Shane Jacobson and Tony Martin drop by. It's Tuesday, the 29th of September, 2009. See you in half an hour. Well, Tony Martin broke into TV comedy back in the days of D-Generation and The Late Show. And you'll remember him as he was so often described, the tall, skinny guy with glasses. Well, here he is doing a street interview with Mick Molloy.
Excuse me, we're just asking people who they think are the best and worst dressed people in Australia. Do you have any opinions in that area?
Oh, yes, I do. Yeah.
Who do you think is the worst?
Susan Renouf.
Really? We've got a picture of her here. What do you make of that outfit?
I think she always puts everything she owns on at once.
Who would you class as Australia's worst dressed person?
Bloody Jeff Kennett. Worst dressed.
What about Daryl Summers? Do you think he's good dresser or...?
I don't watch him that much.
No? Doesn't he get his jumpers off you?
Cruel but fair. Well, Tony Martin has also turned his hand to collecting stories. Tall and true, they say, and he's with us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning, and can I just say that was made 16 years ago.
And you haven't changed a bit. Can you do something about that, please?
Well, no, the thing is, I think we've got a hell of a nerve accusing other people of being badly dressed. I mean, that was made in the era of Acid Wash, The Late Show, and we didn't know it was going to be on DVD.
What a great time that was. The 80s are making a comeback. Sex and the City, the new movie, it's all based in the 80s.
I haven't been asked to participate, surprisingly.
Might want to put your hand up. You are, in fact, a child of the 70s.
Yes.
And a lot of this book is about you growing up, your life outside of showbiz. Was the 70s a good time to be a teenager?
Well, it was one of the chapters in the book is called Pornography Before the Internet, and that talks about how difficult it was to obtain pornographic material for teenagers in that period. And I remember going to the school library and discovering the National Geographics were full of bare-breasted women, and realising that my parents had been secretly cutting them out of all of the National Geographics we had at home. So, you know, it was much easier to filter things in those days.
Yeah, it certainly was. During that time, you actually had braces, but
yes,
they were removed and they were repossessed by the government. Can you explain that for us?
Well, it was just after I left school, actually, and I had braces at work, which is quite awkward when you've just left school. And the option was that, because they were being paid for by the government because we couldn't afford for me to have braces, and the option was to either keep the braces and get the next sort of instalment of them, or buy a stereo. And as I'd grown up in a household where we only had AM radio, and I think I'd heard nothing but the Carpenters and ELO for 10 years, I decided to forego having good teeth so I could afford to hear some decent music.
I think you should break into some Carpenters right about now, Tony.
If you could.
Please go right ahead.
I don't have any Carpenters.
Close to you?
Look, this footage will end up on YouTube. And then
that's exactly why I'm doing it.
Idiot attempts to sing Carpenters, 5 million hits by lunchtime.
Not such a bad thing. Were you very lucky in love growing up?
Lucky in love? Well, no, I was what was called a nerd. So they've recently become quite attractive somehow. New Zealanders and nerds are sort of in fashion, possibly due to the flight of the Conchords. But growing up, no, there was nothing going on there. I was a Doctor Who fan. We didn't have girlfriends.
Fair enough too. The book is called A Nest of Occasionals.
Yeah.
Can you explain the title?
Well, older people will recall A Nest of Occasional Tables.
Oh, Parker Furniture.
Do you remember that?
Oh,
it was
yeah.
Hundreds and hundreds of coffee tables getting smaller and smaller. And so we just had those in the house. And I figured, and I had to write a radio commercial. I started out in radio writing ads in the era of FM when it was just starting. And before that, all radio ads sounded like TDK cassettes, packet of 4 for $10.99. They were really, really fast. JB, you've done it again. And then when FM radio came in, suddenly everything had to sound really smooth, as though the Eagles had written all the ads. And we had to, but the client still wanted as many words as possible, as many products mentioned. And I had to write an ad for A Nest of Occasional Tables, $79.95. 1995. So I lost the word tables. I just said a nest of occasionals, 79.95, and I was nearly sacked. The client called up and said, "What's happened to the word tables? Doesn't make any sense. It's a nest of nothing." So there was all this trouble, and I figured 25 years later, the phrase that had caused so much trouble could now serve a useful purpose as the title of a book.
Well, I hope you're going to send a copy to the client.
I hope so. He still wants me sacked, probably.
Just to remind, just very, very quickly,
yes.
The pairing that you had with Mick Molloy,
yes.
everybody remembers with great affection. Do you remember each other with great affection?
Well, we've sort of had a bit of a falling out. It's sort of like a marriage that went really well for about 16 years, and then there was 2 bad years, and now we're kind of seeing other people.
You could always do an Elizabeth Taylor and just go back and revisit. He could be your Richard Burton.
Well, I'm hoping, because people always ask me about this, and I'm hoping that everything will be explained in a really ugly telly movie where we're played by James Valentine and Richard Clapton.
Wow.
I'm hoping that it'll be like The King, something like that.
Excellent casting.